Welcome everyone to the launch webinar of the SWA Sector Ministers Meeting. We're delighted to have you with us today. As a reminder, I believe this has been put in the chat, but we have interpretation into French for this meeting. If you wish to be listening in English, please select the globe at the bottom and select English, or if your chosen language is French, please select French there. And with that housekeeping detail, I think we are ready to get started. I will hand the floor first to our Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Catarina de Albuquerque, for some opening remarks. Catarina, please.
Thanks so much, Lucinda, and thank you, everyone. Very nice to finally be here with you at a launching event of the sector minister meeting that has been waiting for so long to happen. So it's really a great pleasure to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you who have joined this webinar. I'm sure you must also feel the same eagerness that we feel to come together, to be together, and to work together with the different constituencies, with our ministers, in order to bring the water, sanitation, and hygiene sector forward. We are very pleased to have you all here for the kicking off the preparatory process of the next sector ministers meetings. And we are also honored to have with us representatives of the Indonesian government, who, as you know, is hosting our SMM. I would also like to greet our UNICEF colleagues that are here today in their capacity as co-conveners of the SMM. Has been the case since SWA was created. As we all know, our global targets to secure universal access to water, to sanitation, and to hygiene are not on track. What we know from the most recent Joint Monitoring Program report, around 25% of the world, or around 2 billion people, lack access to safely managed drinking water, and really nearly half of the world, 3.6 billion people, lack safely managed sanitation. 2.3 billion people cannot wash their hands with water and soap. And what the JMP, the WHO and UNICEF JMP tells us is that if we want to achieve universal access, as all of our governments have committed to by 2030, and if we want to realize the rights to water and sanitation, we need to quadruple our rate of progress globally, which means that for some countries, the multiplication of rates of effort must be even higher. This year, meaning next year, the SMM comes at a critical and somehow, well, challenging moment, not just for the sector, but for the world at large. We all continue to live through the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are seeing serious economic repercussions, not only for the sector, but more widely for our economies, for our countries, everywhere in the world, from the effects of the health pandemic. With COP taking place in less than 2 weeks, the Conference of the Parties to the Climate Convention, our attention is also inevitably on the state of our planet and how we come together to ensure that nations and communities are resilient to the climate change that is happening, that is getting more serious, and contributing to help reverse its course. Ensuring a green recovery from COVID and from the economic crisis is a top priority if we are serious about our future as humanity, and if we are serious about sustainable development. 2 years into the pandemic, we will have a chance to come together and look back at how it has impacted us all, and more importantly, look forward to how we can move ahead with a strong agenda of building better for recovery and also resilience. Because if there is one thing we have learned, or one thing that at least we tried to learn, was how to turn challenges into opportunities for progress. For SWA, the SMM is a critical opportunity to foster linkages between the water, sanitation and hygiene sector and other sectors, including climate, but also finance and health. Our goal will always be to elevate the political prioritization of water, sanitation and hygiene across different national processes, national policies, and sectors. And to do this effectively, we need to see more integrated approaches. Bringing sector ministers together with ministers from other sectors, including climate, including health, including finance, this meeting will be an important occasion to share country experiences, exchange knowledge, and jointly review commitments and progress achieved. This high-level meeting will serve as a culmination of a 6-month-long preparatory process at the national level, which supports the other momentum we need if we are going to meet our 2030 goals. The timing of this meeting is an important milestone, following from the COP meeting that, as I said, and as we all know, will take place in less than 2 weeks. In Glasgow, the SMM will be a moment to reflect on the progress that we have made and that we need to make towards a more sustainable future, as well as the role of water and sanitation as a critical contributor in this endeavor. The sector ministers meeting, you might know it already, has been declared an official event towards the UN 2023 midterm review conference for the decade of action on water. Dear partners, we know that facilitating these high-level discussions holds the potential to produce severe, concrete, and magnificent results at country level. And this is precisely the objective of these meetings. It's about us coming together. It's about us learning from good practices and challenges that others are facing, but it's also about all of us coming home and making sure that change happens in our respective countries. For example, and to inspire you a little bit, in Zimbabwe, we had unprecedented engagement during the finance ministers' meeting because the focal point played a key leadership role in mobilizing others, not just in the sector, but also in other ministries, including the Ministry of Finance. And this has led, for example, to substantial budget increases allocated to water, sanitation, and hygiene in the country. For example, in Mali, the focal point has also played a critical role in mobilizing partners and using an active ongoing sector coordination process to integrate the SMM preparatory process into national ones. Similarly, in Bangladesh, in Costa Rica, and in Pakistan, focal points have played key leadership and mobilization roles. They helped identify and work with partners on sector diagnostics, analysis, as well as in the preparation of briefings for ministers ahead, during, and after high-level meetings. When it comes to strengthening the linkages between climate and water, sanitation and hygiene, we have already seen some important examples ahead of the upcoming SMM. For example, in Congo, we have worked with focal points to support the integration of WASH into their nationally determined contributions that they submit in the context of the UNFCCC, the Convention on Climate. In Nicaragua and Honduras, we have worked with the focal points also to facilitate discussions on the integration of water, sanitation, and hygiene in their climate work with a main focus on climate risk vulnerabilities. We have done the same also with all Portuguese-speaking countries. So you can see that the role that you can play a major role in making sure that not only is your country well prepared for the SMM, but that your country becomes a leader in the topics that we will be discussing at the SMM, and that you play a leading role in making sure that change happens in your country when it comes to achieving the SDG targets related to water and sanitation, realizing the human rights to water and sanitation, and making sure that we build forward better after this pandemic. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrina, for those welcoming words. Colleagues, could you please put the agenda slide back on the screen? My name is Lucinda O'Hanlon. I'm the Senior Advisor on Policy and Strategy at Sanitation and Water for All. Soon you will see the agenda for this meeting on your screen, which I just wanted to walk through with the group. As you've just heard, our CEO has just opened the meeting and explained how excited we are to have the sector ministers meeting in May 2022 and the preparatory process that will lead towards that. I will go into some more details about the theme of the meeting next, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. And then our head of country engagement, Muatwa Sitali, will be providing some additional details on the preparatory process itself. And we'll have some more time for questions and answers following that. Finally, we'll conclude with closing remarks by Mrs. Tri Dwi Vergianti, who is with us here from Indonesia. Ms. Vergi is the Director for Housing and Settlement at the Ministry of National Development Planning, the National Development Planning Agency in the Republic of Indonesia, otherwise known as Bappenas. She has 24 years of experience working on Indonesia's policy development in areas of urban settlements, housing, climate change, and environmental management. So we're really grateful to Ms. Vergi for joining us for the closing remarks today, which we will come to. Next slide, please. Thanks. So as I mentioned, I'm going to take us into a little bit more detail about the theme of the sector ministers meeting this year. Next slide, please. As Katerina just mentioned, the world is at an inflection point. We're continuing to face the worst global health pandemic in over a century and suffering the resulting economic repercussions from that. All this amidst a climate crisis that's been festering for decades. And it's a critical moment for us to consider how to build forward better. And this is the theme of our sector ministers meeting. We all know that sanitation, water, and hygiene are a crucial part of sustainable recovery. And we know, Katerina just mentioned the statistics, 2.3 billion people who didn't have access to hand washing facilities. That was before COVID even hit. And that we know is a crucial means to prevent the spread of COVID and future pandemics. The consequential impacts of, preventing future pandemics and the consequential impacts that they wreak on economies and livelihoods means that we must chart forward concrete strategies for the quadrupling of progress that's called for by the Joint Monitoring Program. At the same time, 90% of climate change is happening through weather-related events, which have a profound impact on the hydrological cycle, often resulting in too much water or too little water. And our sanitation infrastructure in particular is at risk because of these realities. In short, water, sanitation, and hygiene must be front and center if we are to effectively address the triple crises of climate, economy, and pandemics. Although these three crises each have distinct dimensions, and perhaps it can seem like a very broad topic area to focus our meeting on, at SWA, we're persuaded that this approach carries value for our partners. As we embark on the preparatory process, we anticipate that the common threads that will emerge in the analysis that you will do at the country level will be really critical for us to get together. These crises, health, economy, and climate, they don't exist in vacuums. They're deeply intertwined and interrelated. While the manifestations may be more prominent in the health space in one country, in economy in another, or in terms of climate change in yet another, every country has been touched in one way or another by these realities. Building forward towards a more resilient future requires recognizing the interrelatedness of these global crises and designing holistic solutions that support integrated approaches. And ensuring access to water, sanitation, and hygiene is a fundamental part of those solutions. The sector ministers meeting is our occasion to come together, share lessons learned through these crises, and ideas for building a more sustainable future. Next slide, please. So the objectives of the sector ministers meeting. We want to come together to self-reflect as a sector and look at how we're stepping up to respond to the crises that are facing our world. What more can be done to review WASH-related policies and commitments in order to ensure that they are part of the road to recovery from the pandemic, supporting a strengthened economy and a greener future? We also want to identify successful approaches for alignment across sectoral policies. For instance, we can look at the commitments that SWA partners have made under the Mutual Accountability Mechanism, and we can link these to commitments that countries will be making at the forthcoming climate conference that Katerina mentioned in Glasgow through their nationally determined contributions. There are opportunities for us to connect across sectors for a more powerful impact overall. This meeting is also a part, as you know very well, of our regular cycle of high-level meetings. It builds from the finance ministers meetings that we held virtually in 2020, where the issues of the pandemic, the economy, and climate change were high on the agenda. This sector ministers meeting also takes those discussions forward and will provide a stepping stone towards the UN 2023 midterm review. All these high-level events depend on continued action at country level and also help sustain global momentum towards our global commitments, including those related to the Decade for Action, the SDGs, and more broadly, obligations to realize all human rights, including the rights to water and sanitation for all. I would invite you in the chat box to share how these themes may resonate in your country. We'll be reading through the chat box throughout the meeting. If you would like to already start putting some ideas there, that would be great. We'd like to hear how this theme meets with your country context. In the meantime, go to the next slide, please, colleagues. I'll share some general information. The dates have been set for the 18th and 19th of May, 2022. As I've already said, we will be hosted by the Government of Indonesia. We are aiming for this to be an in-person event. We are, as usual, co-convening with UNICEF as our main co-convener. And I would say up front, because I think the question may come, that at SWA, our intention is to support travel, of course, to the sector ministers meeting, to the extent that the budget allows. And we're exploring potential modalities for cost sharing in order to be able to maximize participation. So that's what I can say about that for now. This is all that I had to share. We can go into questions and answers now. If questions want to come through the chat, I believe. Colleagues, have you noted any questions yet? No? Shall we keep moving if there are no questions at this stage, and we'll go to Miatwa for more details on the preparatory process itself. But in the meantime, please do put questions in the chat, and we will look at them and answer at the next stage. Satali?
Great. Thank you so much, Lucinda. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Lucinda, just to say we've received a question in the chat, and I think I may be able to speak to this question, but if not, then we will come back to you. So once again, a very big thanks to everybody who's joined us at this time as we begin the preparatory process for the next sector ministers meeting. As we've always done in the past, we know that the preparatory process is a really crucial part of the success of this meeting, but more so of the progress that the sector is expected to see even after the meeting. And so the activities around the sector ministers meeting are broken into three parts. We've got the pre-SMM, which is the preparatory process that's kicking off today, and then the actual SMM itself, and then the aftermath, which is the follow-up as well. I will be presenting to you some of the suggestions that we have for you to engage in your institution, but also in the countries in which you are, so that you can contribute to the process, but more importantly, be able to join the action and also have these discussions influence your work, and also your work influencing the discussions that are happening. Could we have the next slide, please? So the preparatory process and the follow-up activities, as I was saying, will focus on these three crucial issues that Lucinda has already talked about. We're basically faced with a crisis that impacts water and sanitation and hygiene, but we also realize that this crisis has got several dimensions. We've got the climate problem, which has been festering for a while, and then we've got the economic and health challenges, which have been precipitated by COVID-19. And so in the backdrop of these challenges, we are looking to identify solutions and bring these solutions that stem from evidence and put them in front of our key political decision makers, so that in the choices of the trade-offs they have, they could use the right evidence and be able to make the right decisions. Now, this meeting is not only for ministers in terms of the decisions that have to be taken, but it's also for different heads of agencies. They have to decide on resources, they have to decide on institutional policies. And so we hope that the analysis and dialogue that this meeting will nourish will also contribute to these various institutional decisions that are really crucial for us to see the progress that we need to see in the sector. This meeting will use multi-stakeholder discussions at country level to ensure that ministers are properly prepared and briefed ahead of the meeting. And we also hope that these multi-stakeholder discussions at country level will also be crucial in bringing actors ahead of the meeting, so that they could analyze and identify some of the actions that they can take, and even be able to take commitments in the form of in contributing to the mutual accountability mechanism, and be able to track and follow these commitments. Could we have the next slide? So the preparatory process has got four objectives. Number one, it's to demonstrate and highlight the economic opportunities and benefits that the water and sanitation sector offers. We've often been told by those that make critical economic decisions that sometimes they see WASH as a drain. And now in the context of COVID, it may still be seen as a drain if we are not able to communicate in terms of its economic benefits, in terms of the cost of inaction, and more so in terms of the savings that can be made within the sector. So this is really crucial, that in the context of the economic crisis that we're seeing due to COVID or other challenges, that we're able to articulate the economic contributions that water and sanitation are able to make. We are also looking at being able to demonstrate the value of water and sanitation to the climate challenge, as well as to the health recovery. And one of the objectives is also to mobilize political leaders, so that together with them, we can identify and agree on follow-up processes on the commitments that have already been tabled in the context of COP26, as well as in the context of the mutual accountability mechanism. So we're really looking to go beyond dialogue, to focus into action and be able to have smart, actionable items that can be followed on. We're also looking to develop and strengthen partnerships that support ministers responsible for climate, economy, water, sanitation, and hygiene, as well as health, to work together. So what are the practical ways that there could be action in this area? We're seeing that through these multi-stakeholder platforms and partnerships that we hope this meeting can also help to support so that these can materialize. And the final objective is to secure long-term engagement from participants and also build concrete results. So as we get into the preparatory process, we'll be looking for very clear things that ministers would be interested to follow up on. And if we can link those ministers to where those experiences are, we'll be looking for such experiences. We'll be looking to see which ministers are identifying low-hanging fruits and that they would like to follow up on those low-hanging fruits, because that is the only way we can tie the value of this meeting to the results that we would like to see. Could we have the next slide, please? And so what the outcomes of the preparatory process, we are hoping that at the end of this preparatory process, ministers will be able to understand the contribution that the water, sanitation and hygiene sector is making to climate mitigation and adaptation, to economic and health recovery, and that they can commit to prioritizing the water, sanitation and hygiene sector because of the contribution that it's making to these critical areas. So we're looking for that positive message in terms of the contribution that water and sanitation is making, both as an end and as a means to achieving broader economic, social and development goals. We're also looking for, we hope that one of the outcomes will be that ministers will be able to identify initiatives to showcase progress and agree areas for joint work and commit their support through improved systems and services delivery. And also we're looking for stakeholders within the sector to agree steps that they will take to achieve their climate commitments and contribute to economic and health recovery. So you will see that most of these outcomes are really centered around actions that ministers can take, but also actions that partners can take, and also how we can demonstrate the value that water, sanitation, and hygiene is bringing to these three challenges of climate, economic, and health recovery. Could we have the next slide? So in terms of the outputs, one output is the major output at country level will be the country overview document. This is a document that we hope can consolidate the analysis that will happen at the country level and be able to put the message in a language that the minister can digest, and also showcase the actions that the government plus partners will also be willing to take at country level as a follow-up to the meeting. So the country overview document is really the main output of the preparatory process. We've suggested an outline. This will come to you in a guidance document, which we will be circulating in the coming weeks. But the really key output that we're looking for is this country overview, which pulls together the analysis that would have happened at country level, identifies some of those key actions that need to be taken forward, and it would also serve as a briefing for ministers ahead of the meeting. Now, the three topics that we're talking about here in terms of climate, economic, and health recovery, and as Lucinda was saying, it will obviously be likely that in some countries are experiencing one or two of these challenges more than they are experiencing the others. And so we would like it to be context specific. We would like your own analysis and sector discussions to be able to determine which of these areas are really crucial for you. And however, we would like to see that the minister is provided some minimal information on the three topics so that the minister can come and be able to discuss these topics at the meeting. Could we have the next slide? Thank you. So some of the activities that we're proposing, and for those of you that have been involved in previous meetings, you will find that some of these are similar to some of the activities you've seen before. What is really key for ministers, we would like them to be prepared at the country level, not just through them reading the country overview, but through them having a discussion with the ministers that are relevant to this discussion. So we would like to propose some interministerial dialogue at country level, and you could choose when this would happen, but we would like to propose, it could be a breakfast, it could be a seminar, it could be a conference, it could be a behind the curtains meeting of the ministers responsible for water, sanitation and hygiene, as well as climate or the environment, as well as the economy. And it will be important that in front of these ministers, they have the right analysis and evidence, and also that then they have the proposals of some of the key political decisions and actions that they can undertake. So I would really like to highlight the value of these interministerial dialogues. We've seen them happen in the past in several countries, including Nigeria and Mali and several others, which were able to bring these ministers ahead of the meeting. Would also like to propose a series of national conversations on these three topics, and these could be done through the national sector coordination discussions, or they could be done through standalone meetings that are really focused on either climate or the economy or health or combined. But we think that for there to be really focused, you might want to choose one topic and be able to work with that topic in these national dialogues. And at the end of that dialogue, identify those actions and priorities that can then be consolidated into the country overview. The country overview is, of course, one of the outputs, as I said earlier on, so that will benefit from the sector analysis and diagnostics that you do. We also propose that partners in each country brief the minister. So there would have to be a number of briefings, one briefing which should be happening soon after you receive the country overview document, or even soon after this meeting when you have this information about the sector ministers meeting. So this preliminary briefing is really just to inform the minister, highlight to the minister what the purpose of the meeting is, canvass their interest, be able to tell us if you get the sense that the minister is already committing to participating in the meeting and what information might be needed in there. You might want to do another ministerial briefing midway and another ministerial briefing just ahead of the meeting. So these ministerial briefings need to be planned ahead of time. We're also proposing media engagement in terms of media outreach at country level, as well as the TV and radio discussions that can make this discussion go beyond the WASH community, that this discussion can go beyond the community that we have here of water, sanitation and hygiene actors, because we need to engage climate actors, we need to engage economic and health actors, and so the media would be a really good platform for that to happen. We are also proposing a week of action, and we're not picking a specific date for every country, because we would like that week of action on these topics to really depend on your context. It might be around World Water Day in one country. It might be early in April in another country. You might do it around the joint sector review in another country. But we think that that's a good moment to even take some of the ministers on a field visit, take them to see a place where they could actually speak to the community, but also see the impact of climate change, and also see some of the impact on the economy and health that they would need for them to be champions for the sector. Could we have the next slide? Okay, so there are a series of events going up to the meeting. I will not go into the details. Now, today we are launching, or rather kicking off the preparatory process. We will be doing another discussion after COP to follow up on COP and see more on the action that needs to happen there. And that will focus a lot on the first sort of crisis around the climate. And then in subsequent discussions, we would then also focus on the other topics. We are proposing in January or February that countries begin to prepare the country overview, and then another webinar towards the end of January on building forward better and looking more for solutions on these triple crises. And so we'll be looking for examples there of how WASH is contributing to the climate response or the economic response or health recovery. And then in May, we would we are proposing that perhaps this is when some of these WASH week of action, this is when the SMM actually happens in May, the week of the 16th, and Lucinda already gave us the exact dates. And then we would also start the follow-up after that. Could we have the next slide, please? Okay, so thank you so much. These are the proposals in terms of suggestions of the activities, and also in terms of the output of the meeting. Output being the country overview, but of course that will be supported by a series of activities. From the Secretariat, we are lining up a series of support mechanisms, including some tools on climate, some climate work sessions that we've already done this year that we'll be willing to do next year, and then also some tools around the economy and the health recovery. So I will pause at this point so we can have a little bit of a discussion. I see that we have a series of questions. And the first question, Lucinda, was the one from Zobea. So if maybe we can just come back to you, Lucinda. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sitali, and thank you everyone for the questions that are popping up in the chat. Indeed, a lot is coming up. I wonder, Katerina, do you want to take a first selection of questions?
Thank you so much, Lucinda, with great pleasure. So one of the questions that we had was about how this webinar is contributing to realizing SDG 6 at country level. And of course, it's not this webinar per se that will create a revolution. What we hope is that this webinar kicks off a revolution, a good one, a peaceful revolution by which we will boost political will and also engagement for water, sanitation and hygiene. As Sitali mentioned, the whole preparatory process towards the meeting is aimed at mobilizing political will at country level when it comes to water, sanitation and hygiene. So, and this is why we are suggesting the promotion of national dialogues, national weeks of action, ways to get the minister's attention, the sector minister's attention, but also promote the engagement with the media, but also with other sectors. We think that it is crucial if we want to make SDG 6 a reality at country level, that from our sector we reach out to other sectors, to health, economy, finance, and other sectors, and also that we reach up to the highest levels of power in the country. This combination of reaching out and reaching up might be the success formula to make sure that there is change at country level. We also think that then the realization of the meeting itself next year can be also an important momentum where the ministers will meet with their peers from other countries, where they will be able to discuss about successes and bottlenecks, where they will be able to learn from what the others have done wrong or right. And we also hope that this and of course engage with other stakeholders. And what has happened in the past is that the engagement with their peers, the engagement with other stakeholders has made ministers come home and operate change and make change happen at country level. So this is how we see the domino effect of this webinar and the country preparatory process and the SMM and the follow-up to the SMM. Let me add another thing that I had put in my notes and I forgot to mention, which is the mutual accountability mechanism. We know that these high-level meetings are very good magnets around which countries or because of which countries and other stakeholders feel compelled to gather at country level in order to determine what are the commitments that the sector wants to make when it comes to water, sanitation and hygiene. And the high-level meetings provide for a good hook for these commitments to be tabled. And of course, these commitments commitments mean accountability. They mean mutual accountability, and they will make sure we have work on water and sanitation and hygiene towards making these commitments a reality will continue way after the SMM. I would like also to refer to another question, which is about who participates at the SMM. So as you know, SMM stands for Sector Ministers Meeting. So this is a ministerial meeting, right? And basically, we think that it is important to have ministers around the table because it were the governments that have signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's also the governments that have the obligations to realize the human rights to water and sanitation. They are the ones that have the obligations towards their people to make water, sanitation, and hygiene a reality for all. So this is why we call the meetings ministerial meetings. The focus is put on the governments. Of course, we also believe, and all of you as partners believe, in the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement. We know that we do it better when we do it with others, when we discuss with others, when we provide platforms for meaningful participation and engagement. And this is why in everything that we do at SWA, we want to make sure that there is multi-stakeholder engagement. The SMMs are not different. So we want to make sure there will be representatives from every single constituency in order to enrich the debates and in order to enrich the meeting in general. Now, in terms of what is the number of CSOs? What is the number of academic institutions? What is the number of private sector partners that will receive an invitation? We don't know at the Secretariat. It's not the Secretariat that determines. There is a working group called the High-Level Political Dialogue Working Group that is the one where the discussions about the agenda of the meeting take place, and which is the one that will determine the number of seats that will be available per constituency for the SMM. So this important working group meets very regularly, and they will soon come up with inter alia these numbers, which will be immediately communicated to the constituency representatives, and then each constituency will determine who will be the lucky few that will be elected or chosen to represent any given constituency. I think I will stop now because I've talked for too long already. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Katerina, also for mentioning the high-level political dialogue work group. I wanted to touch on that as well because several of the questions that came up in the chat relate to issues that you would like to see on the agenda. We had a comment about the importance of integrity and ensuring that we don't have climate maladaptation. We had questions about what types of environmental measures can help, whether we need to consider diversifying raw water harvest. So these types of substantive topics are things that will come up in the agenda of the SMM, which will be curated by the high-level political dialogue work group. The thing I wanted to mention about that is that that curation of the agenda will look at what's coming out of the country processes, and we'll look at what priorities are being articulated at the country level so that we develop an agenda for the meeting which is responsive to your national context. There's several other questions that I would like to invite Sitali to answer on. Sitali, we've had a question about the role of CSOs in the process, how we're going to be using the finance minister's handbook, how people can figure out which focal points to talk to at national level, questions about resources for the national level preparatory process, questions also about translations of materials. More may have popped up while I've been speaking. And before I hand to the floor, there was one other thing I wanted to react to, which was Neil's comment about alignment of commitments. And indeed, the SMM is an official part of the 2023 preparatory process. And as Katerina said, this is part of a journey that we are on that has started already before, but in the next year or next 18 months, I would say, we're going to have commitments at COP next month. We'll have commitments at our sector ministers meeting, and all of that should be aligned with what countries are going into the 2023 midterm event with. So that is certainly our intention, that SWA can play a role in ensuring coherence across these various commitment-making processes. With that, Sitali, if you agree, I'd like to hand it over to you for some of the more specific questions, and then I'll gather some more.
Great, thank you so much. And I think these are really great questions, and thank you so much for the engagement. So let me start with the question about the CSOs, and I will also touch on the research and learning constituency, the private sector constituency, and our new utilities and regulators constituency, as well as the external support agency constituencies. So, and also I think for everybody in different countries, please also pay particular attention to this point. From this kickoff launch, so this just starts the process. We will be reaching out to each and every country, to partners in those countries, so that we could have a bilateral country by country discussion. So these country by country discussions will be facilitated by our different country contacts, regional coordinators that are engaging with these countries. So please do make sure that you are involved in that process. If you are not in our mailing list, I would suggest that maybe you even just put your email in the chat, so we can be able to put your email in the chat plus the name of the country, so we can make sure that you're also informed about this process. And before I get to the CSOs, let me answer a question that's related to this, which was about who leads this process then at country level. The process is expected to be led by the government focal point, working in conjunction with the other focal points for the CSO, for the private sector research and learning, and other constituencies where those focal points are present. If they're not present, it's also a time when we could help to identify that focal point in that constituency and make sure that we have that representation. So key point here is that the government focal point is the one who's expected to trigger the process. However, it happens. So if it happens that the government focal point maybe is not on this call, maybe they're not responding to our request for a discussion, as partners, feel very free to reach out to us, and then we can also work with the government to make sure that there is that initial discussion. So that initial discussion between you in whatever country you are and us should happen with the government being involved. If for some reason the government is not being involved, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we can kickstart it from that process as well. Now, in terms of CSOs, you will have a constituency specific briefing in addition to this discussion that we're having now. So there are obviously roles in terms of helping to mobilize actors, contributing to the sector analysis that's going on, using some of your information and evidence that you have to bring it to the table, identifying the commitments, your own commitments, but also helping to follow up the commitments of others to make sure that actually when we talk about mutual accountability, we're doing it in practice. So the different things that CSOs can do, and these apply also to several of the other constituencies. So let me just finish this point by saying that we will do the country by country dialogue, the one-on-one sort of country discussion. And in that discussion, we'd like to have the government plus all the other stakeholders as well. And then we will do the constituencies by constituency discussions as well. So at the global level, the research and learning, private sector, external support agencies, utilities and regulators will also be invited to a conversation where we'll provide more information that will now be tailored to that specific constituency. Translations of materials, I think I will tie this to the question that Jen asked about support at country level. Our recommendation, and this has been the case, is that in this first discussion that we have with partners, we would like to encourage people in different countries to identify the key actions that you would like to do in terms of sector analysis, preparation of the country overview, interministerial dialogues, even put some costs there, and then discuss also as partners. I think the timing now is right, given that institutions are doing budgets, in terms of how we can contribute, how partners can contribute to those preparatory activities. And then let's get into next year and see how that is happening. Previously, most partners have been able to contribute to pool resources there together. In this resource constrained environment, we're hoping that we can continue to cost share that responsibility. And then on alignment of commitments, Lucinda, you mentioned that. I think it is indeed a valid one, and I think we're not looking to duplicate commitments. Where the mutual accountability mechanism of SWA, developed by SWA partners, really says that these commitments should emerge out of national discussions and out of the national, they should align already with the national plan. And so they have to be really anchored on those national processes so that there's no duplication. And I think we should really be making sure that that is indeed the case. I may have missed one or two, Lucinda, and I'll be happy to come back on that.
I think one of the ones was on the finance minister's handbook.
Yes, thank you. So that's a really good question. And the finance handbook is a key contributor to the discussion also about economic recovery. The really good examples that you will find in there that can help even on climate finance, but also on blended finance, on different types of financing mechanisms that can help to deal with the context that you have. So I would suggest that you use that. Of course, by all means, please use that. And there's several other tools and materials that we will mention in the guidance document that are emerging or have already emerged that we would suggest can be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Sitali. And in the meantime, many more questions and inputs coming in through the chat. A couple more suggestions for the agenda, linked to the mutual accountability mechanism, multi-stakeholder processes, a comment about the World Water Forum to be hosted in Senegal in March. And indeed, we have hope that we can be helpful in connecting SWA partners who are actively engaged there to increase our collective impact in that space. And of course, there are other meetings throughout 2022 and 2023. There's the Dushanbe conference, there's COP27. So like I said, we see this as a continuation, a conversation that continues at global level, continually fed by the discussions that you're having at national level. There's also a question on which country ministers would participate. I think it's a little bit soon for us to say anything definitive on that. What I can say is it will depend on country priorities. Certainly sector ministers meetings, and the intention is to include, sector ministers, and the intention is to include ministers from other relevant sectors connected to the theme of the meeting. While I was speaking, I saw lots more pop up in the chat, which I wasn't able to read. But I noticed that we're almost coming to the hour. So Sitali, I just look to you to see, are there more questions that we need to answer before?
I think the very, very quick.
Please.
So I was just going to say there was a request that we share the finance minister's handbook by Sosu. So Sosu, if you could just put your email in the chat, we'll make sure that you receive the finance handbook. There was, I believe, yes, a question from Mr. Doba in Zimbabwe saying that this has come at the right time. and that we should share the theme in terms of the concept and the roadmap to the SMM, which we will do. And again, please do begin to schedule meetings with your respective regional coordinators to have these country by country dialogues to kickstart to take this discussion to the next level in every country. I think that is what I saw so far. I think you answered Neil's question, Lucinda. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I saw one other question about whether SWA will be present at COP. For those who are involved in the COP preparations, you'll be aware that it's quite complicated in these last couple of weeks. We are hoping to be there. We are definitely engaged in the first ever water pavilion, and we'll be hosting some sessions there. You may have already seen some announcements about that in our social media channels. So if you haven't seen it, you will be seeing the ways in which the SWA partnership will be active at COP. With that, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Virgi from Indonesia, our host, for some closing remarks. Ms. Virgi, are you with us?
Yes, Lucinda, I'm here.
Thank you so much for joining and welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you, Lucinda. So may I address Ms. Katarina de Albuquerque, CEO of SWA. Well, it's afternoon here, so but I believe it is morning there. So good morning to Ms. Katarina. And then Ms. Kelly Ann Naylor, Global WASH Chief of UNICEF, country representatives, partners representative, all participants. Greetings from Indonesia. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, maybe some of you, or some of you. So on this wonderful
Ms. Virgi, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Have you selected the English language channel on your screen?
Okay.
Because you are not being interpreted into the other languages. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a globe.
Okay.
Okay. And then you select English. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. Done. I choose English, right?
Exactly. Perfect.
Okay, done. Thank you. Thank you, Katarina. So again, on this wonderful occasion, I would like to express my appreciation to SWA for your excellent moderation of this webinar today, the kickoff of the preparatory process for 2022 SWA Sector Ministerial Meeting. Finally, we have the kickoff for these SMM meetings. My name, maybe some of you may not know me. My name is Tridewi Virgianti, or Ibu Virgi here, how they call me, the Director for Housing Settlement of the Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas of Republic of Indonesia. So thank you for SWA that has given me the opportunity to meet you all, although it's through this channel, Zoom meeting online, to deliver the closing remark of this webinar. I'm happy to be here with you all. In the spirit of and the commitment, our commitment to achieve SDG goals, I'm delighted to announce, it's been also announced by SWA, that the Government of Indonesia will host the next sector ministerial meetings of SWA, which will be held in the third week of May 2022. SWA and Indonesia has planned to convene the event in Bali. If nothing changes, hopefully nothing changes so much, the SMM will be held in Bali, Indonesia. So I hope you are all excited to come here. As the focal point from the Government of Indonesia, Bappenas, for SWA, I openly invite you all, WASH stakeholders, to attend this SMM. The event will be an opportunity, not only for Indonesia, but also for other countries, to have a high-level advocacy and discussion between ministers responsible for WASH, as well as ministers that is related to the theme of this SMM meeting. Of course, to push forward WASH agenda, to push forward WASH target, especially universal access for all. We also believe that through SMM, all participants can share and learn from each other's experience and renew and strengthen the commitment towards the provision of water and sanitation for all. Indonesia commits to hosting a program that hopefully will inspire and renew our collective commitments to reaching the SDG for water and sanitation. On this occasion as well, I will also want to restate our objective. I also want to highlight our involvement in SWA, where we can also hope have a benefit and gain a better support on a high-level advocacy, especially at the top level of government, like the president, ministers, not just minister of the sectoral minister, but especially minister of finance and other WAS-related ministers. Distinguished guests, ladies, participants, all participants, water and sanitation and hygiene, or WAS, is one of our top priority on this current 5-year medium-term development plan, which have closely aligned with SDG Goal 6 targets for WAS. However, we cannot achieve the SDG without convergent efforts among different stakeholders, locally, nationally, as well as globally. And especially without high-level commitment and real action, it will be impossible as well to achieve this target. We realize that the implementation of SMM in Indonesia will provide strategic momentum to strengthen our political will and support for the national movement toward open defecation-free, safely managed drinking water and sanitation and hygiene. We really hope that the SMM meeting will be an event where our top-level decision maker will strengthen their commitment to implement WASH initiatives. One of the initiatives that we plan to be launched in SMM, it's a national program, is WAS microfinance for low-income households. It's currently being developed by the Ministry of Finance together with all other stakeholders. We also want to announce that this SMM is in the same time we also hold a national water and sanitation conference. So it will be a back-to-back event for SMM. So we hope that it will also give a more strong commitment in terms of national commitment toward WAS target. In organizing as well with UNICEF as well for all their hard work in organizing this meeting, including technical discussion we had with the SWA Secretariat, UNICEF, and our team to prepare for the SMM. I wish you all the very best for this kickoff and also the preparatory process later on, and hopefully we will warmly welcome you all all of you to our wonderful Indonesia next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Virgi, thank you so much for your remarks and for confirming the commitment of the Government of Indonesia to host this important meeting. We are really excited to be working with you and all partners on this. With that, I can close this launch meeting. As Sitali has explained, there are quite a lot of next steps happening in each of your countries and each of your constituencies. So I'm closing, but the ending message is stay tuned and to be continued. We have about 6 months to go. And here we have the further details of people that you can be in touch with. We're all here to help, and we're looking forward to working with you to have a successful sector ministers meeting in May 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you.